August 2019. We're here at the Farm Bureau, the Henry County Beekeepers Club location. We had our first field day the 27th of July, where we installed our two teaching colonies here. And at the time we installed them, I felt like they were close to being maxed out with space available. So today we're going to add a second deep just to make sure they have plenty of room for expansion as the winter approaches. We want them to increase in population. The filmer today is Monty, our president from last year. He was kind enough to come out and put this together to be posted on our web page, and we will try to keep that current to keep the members informed of what's going on, in addition to our Facebook and newsletter. Today I'm going to get started by lighting the smoker. Most of you already know how to do it, but you may pick up a few tips from me on how not to do it today. As I've said before, lighting the smoker is one of the easiest things that I have found to do with beekeeping. And conversely, one of the hardest things, I think I'm in an ant bed, one of the hardest things is keeping it lit. So, see how easy that was to light it? The more smoke you have coming out, I have found initially the better. And just keep putting it in, keeping it going. Here, most of us, I'm sure, have an abundance of pine straw available. If you don't have it in your yard, I'm sure sure your neighbors have it in theirs. Don't use the pine straw from the big box stores. You may think that's a good, readily available source, but keep in mind they probably treat it with a pesticide, and in essence what you'd be doing then is gassing your bees, which would not be a good thing. Alright, so once you got your smoke going, come over. We'll go in this colony here first. We've identified it as Z. They both had queens. We did observe the queen during the installation. What I do is when I open it up, place the cover in front on the ground. Then in that I put whatever cover I have for my feeder. Get the bees with a little bit of smoke. Take the jars that I could put the syrup in and set it inside of there, and it's out of my way. I'm not going to kick it, knock it over, step on it and fall, or break it, or any of that. Come in and remove the inner cover, and again that's got bees on it. Set that in the front, out of my way. Hit them with a few more puffs of smoke, kind of help calm them down. When I use, this is the preferred high tool, the J-hook. I'm right-handed, so I pick up the left side of the frame first. Come over to the right side, pick it up, try to remove it as straight as possible so you don't roll bees. You can see they're drawing the comb out. Still got a ways to go, and that's the number one frame, closest to me. So we're getting pretty close to, as I suspected, needing to add another deep. I run pretty much double deeps on all of my colonies. I set that one out of the box, out of the way, to give me room to further work. Now this is number 2. They've got it pretty well full and capping it off. Again, it's sugar syrup, but they make no distinction in how they handle it, whether it's nectar or sugar syrup. So as I suspected, they're getting very close to being 80% or better, which is a good indicator for adding that second deep. If you haven't gotten your bees yet, I strongly encourage you to practice how you handle the frame, how you want to roll it and flip it while you're inspecting. Keeping in mind, try to hold them as much as you can over the box. Reason being is you will drop a frame. sooner or later it's going to happen. And when you do, you want as much of the bees as possible to fall in the box. Alright, so we've got our other deep hive body in place. I want to show you something right quick. What I have done throughout is checkerboard these frames. I've taken an old that's got drawn out comb. Any bees that are on there just got on it since I brought it out. And then I alternate, put a new foundation, then old drawn comb, new foundation all the way through. I don't have these marked, but what I do on my frames now, when I put them in service, I'll write the last 2 digits of the date on the frame. That helps me gauge how long I've used that. You can tell also by the coloration on the wax. Some of that has been used for honey and some for brood. As the brood develops, it spins cocoons that helps darken the wax, plus over time that builds up. So after about 4 years, you want to replace all of that with new wax, new honeycomb. Small cells make for small bees. Alright, so we've got all of that back in place like we want it. I'm going to put this cover back on. What did I do with my other box? I'm changing out these. Here's a configuration I use for my feeder. It's just a rectangle that I've made with a hole big enough to set a jar in with number 8 hardware cloth on it. So when I come out to feed the bees, I can take the jar off, feed the bees, and don't bother them. But with the heat and that we've been having, I pretty much close off that vent hole. So what I'm going to do is enlarge this, so I'll have a space in the center, still covered with the hardware cloth that will allow for ventilation. And then at 4 places around, I'll have these holes where I can put 4-quart jars, and that'll give me more feed for the bees, since it is a little bit of a drive to get out here to service them. That'll mean they'll have plenty to eat when they want it. Pretty much all of my supers serve double duty. They are covers for my feeders, so they're protected from the weather. This is a 1/2 to 1.5 pound sugar to 1 pound of water mixture that I feed my bees. Closely resembles the sugar content of the nectar. Now, 2 things. One, when I put this jar back over it, human beings are creatures of habit. So get in the habit of turning that jar upside down, off to the side. So when you put it over the opening, you're not drenching your bees. Now in the summertime, that advantage I have found to this is when I come out in the wintertime to feed my bees, and they'll have a hive body over it like this. I'll reach in here, pull that jar up, set it off to the side, and I can hold my hand over that hole, and I can literally feel the heat coming up out of that hole. That gives me a good indication that my colony is doing well. If I don't feel that heat, then I investigate further. I open it up, go inside to see what's going on. Place my outer cover. Now, if you'll notice, there's all kind of writings. Not all of these notes pertain to this colony, obviously. I need to update this, and what I'll do is just spray paint it white, and then I can start over again with new notes. But I write some observations of what I saw when I inspect, and I use a lot of abbreviations. I don't know if you can read that, make it out, but it's Sol Queen in the bottom box. Lots of capped stores, meaning capped syrup in this case. A good brood pattern, and then bees plus plus plus. That just means that there were a lot of bees. They were full of bees on the inside. Now, 2 things I always take with me. One is a jar of cinnamon. when you open that up, especially if you use a hive top feeder, there'll be ants all in there. Don't put this down on top of the frames, but sprinkle it inside around on the inner cover. And since I despise the little buggers, if I find them trailing up the side of the hive, I'll sprinkle that too, and it just kind of helps mask their trail. So the other thing I have is a box of just regular old table salt. Table salt. I buy it at Sam's when I go there, basically $1 a box. If you look all around on the ground, you'll see it. It does a couple of things. One, the salt will kill the weeds. Of course, when it does rain, you're going to have to reapply it. But hive beetles, when the larvae crawl out of the hive, they'll pupate in the ground, and this salt will help to kill them. Not only do I sprinkle it around, but I try to get some, as much as I can, up underneath each of the colonies. Just taking a handful, throwing it up in there, and trying not to do it from the front. I found that the bees don't care for that very much. But it will kill the weeds, kill the grass, so you don't have to weed very much. Basically doing the same steps on this one that we did on the other. Like I said, my biggest concern was to make sure that both the colonies had the room to expand as they're getting ready to build up for the winter. Now, you will hear people talk about assembling your equipment, and if you notice how difficult it is sometimes prying up these frames, that's exactly why you want to glue it and nail it, both, because you will tear them up if you don't. And again, I'm finding, just like on the other colony, they are pretty much at capacity on these frames, and they are ready to go. Now, if you open up your box and you see that, you may think that's a great sign. But if you've got the bulk of your frames covered, then they're what you call honeybound. They're running out of room because they're putting up too many stores. Too many stores can be a bad thing. Now, what I would recommend, if you find that and you've got all your equipment committed, pull out some of those frames, put them in the freezer, then later on in the year, take them out, thaw them, give them back to the bees. Another reason you want to hold it over your hive body as much as you can when you're inspecting. As I said a moment ago, if you drop it or even in rolling it, sometimes bees will let go. They will fall back into the hive body, and you can dislodge your queen. I have done it. Fortunately for me, that particular day, I noticed her when she fell on the ground. That was the year I had marked queens. There's another good brood pattern. These empty cells you see could be for a number of reasons. One, as dark as that is, it's possible some of the bees have started to emerge. The other is the housekeeping bees, nurse bees, may have felt like those larvae weren't going to make it and decided they'd pull them out. All right, this hive, for whatever reason, only has 9 frames in it, but get a shot right in here, Monty. We talk about bee space. This here had a big gap, and I'll show you this frame, what the bees have done. If it's too much of a gap, they'll draw it out with honeycomb, and that is a lot of honeycomb. There's no way I would be able to get a 10th frame in there. I'm not exactly 100% sure. I guess just beekeeper oversight. So this colony is definitely ready for another box. And again, keeping things pretty much in the order that they were originally in. Just slide everything over. Now, if when you go to drop that last frame in, if you still don't have room, if it's still too tight, just use it as a lever and slide them over to get it in there. And then when you're done, come back and just try to even them up. alternated between one that had some drawn comb and one that had new foundation. Even though some of these frames look old, they are, but they were also waxed with wire in them, and I am rough on my equipment. Let's show you how different two colonies can be side by side. That one over there, they had pretty much consumed every bit of their sugar syrup, even though they were capped off at the same time. This one still has at least a half a jar left. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. Maybe they found some kind of a nectar source. Maybe they were eating some of their own stores. And in addition to the 1/2 pound sugar to a pound of water, I also use a supplement, Honeybee Healthy. I found that that does stimulate the bees. The one year that I did not use it, I thought there was a noticeable difference in the overall colonies, so I prefer to use it. I also add a small amount of just regular old unscented Clorox bleach to the syrup. That will help keep it from molding. As a general rule, if I don't have a honey super on my colonies, there's syrup I'm feeding. Now that's just the way that I do it. Other beekeepers, if you will continue to come to the meetings, you'll find out that there's almost as many ways to keep bees as there are beekeepers. Now it's important, I think, for you to keep notes when you come back out before you do your inspection. Take a minute, read your last couple of notes to get a good idea of what you saw the last time you were in, so to see if you need to see if they've made improvements. All right, hope you all enjoyed this. My name is Danny Harvey, current president from Henry County Beekeepers. The other officers of the club are Christine Hurst, vice president, Melanie Nelson, secretary, Jerry Haygood, treasurer. We have board of directors, Clark and Carolyn Runyon, Ray and Elise Carlson, Roger Holloman.